A very good evening, a warm welcome to an incredibly festive edition of Dan Really Likes Wine as First Thursdays kick in Cape Town. And First Thursdays start at about 6 p.m. on a Thursday, which is about 4 hours after everybody in Cape Town has started their weekend. So they've had time to get home and ready themselves for a night out. And in this case, that night out is at Culture Wine Bar, that hedonistic home of indulgence under Matt Manning and his team that brings together an extraordinary collection of wine, not just from South Africa, but from all over the world. And tonight includes a great collection of wine guests. It is the very first Dan Really Likes Wine takeover of Culture Wine Bar, and so we've descended upon the Cape, not just myself and my team, but a really cool collection of wine people. Over the course of this evening, you are going to be meeting the likes of Nongcebo Langa, who is behind some exceptional wine out of Delheim, including a brand new Riesling you're going to be seeing more of on Dan Really Likes Wine in the next little while. Tom Orpen has descended from Warwick with some vintage Cabernet Franc. The wonderful Berene Sauls, who now owns half of Tesselaarsdal village. She's with us as well today. We're going to be catching up with Seabelo Senatla a little later. The Stormer's Wing and Blitzbock legend. Also a wine lover who's made his own 7 varietal blend in partnership with Idiom. If she has passed her driver's test, Alexandra McFarlane will be joining us as well with her Cinso Semillon we are going to be showing this evening. We've also got a rather dodgy South American taxi driver who runs a B&B down the road, and he's going to be showing us some wine made by Erica Obermeyer, and the wine is magnificent, as of course is the place he calls home, which we'll introduce in a moment. And those are just some of the stories we'll be sharing on Dan Really Likes Wine this evening. We'll also be catching up with Matt Manning, chef extraordinaire, who is the proprietor of not just Culture, but the assorted nooks, crannies, rooms, restaurants, cafes that surround the venue. And we'll be touching base with Caroline Ngwenya, who was a cricketer once upon a time, but is now one of the more esteemed sommeliers in Cape Town. So lots of great guests to speak to. Matt will kick us off in just a moment. Before we do that, though, here's an update on the latest wine news. Right, here we go with our news. Let's kick off with yesterday, and this was out at Short Market Club, and a collection of wine-loving reprobates from the north meeting up with one of the aristocrats of Stellenbosch winemaking. Verraad's beaming from the background there, and well he should, because he got a great group together to try some of his new wine, and in particular the Eden range, the high-density wines, which he's grouped together so tightly to create a very special selection of wine. These are the Cabernet Francs yesterday, the Dolomite, which is as entry-level as a Verraad's wine can be, the family Cabernet Franc, which was the favourite for most people yesterday, and then that Eden that cost a small fortune and needs a good few years to start coming into its own. It is a very small run, only 500 bottles or so, expressing the very best of the Cabernet Franc for which Verraad's is so famous. He only came to it when he was the assistant winemaker below Clippan, tasted some Cabernet Franc, which was mostly sitting in Bordeaux blends at that stage, said to the winemaker at the time, I think we should have a single varietal. Now he's got 3 of them and is headlining what has become a really exciting part of the South African red wine offering. Some lovely Shannon as well. Look out for that coming up soon on Dan Really Likes Wine. And then this was the night before. This was the opening of the Potluck Club Johannesburg. Luke Del Roberts shifting up north with the restaurant that is a celebration of a lot of different cuisines, but a lot of South American touches in particular, with the Cerviche range a highlight, a couple of great sliders. What's probably most interesting, though, the cocktail range, a Thai green curry cocktail, which is nowhere near as hideous as it sounds. Loads of fresh lemongrass and chili, and a great combination. Also some lovely wine. Now, house wine normally is a bit hit and miss, a touch abrasive, and usually, well, it's nice and cheap, so I'll buy some and chug it down. This is not that at all. This is made by the Belgians. They brought it in from Almenkirk, so some cool climate fruit, a Sauvignon Blanc on the right, and a Syrah Merlot blend on the left that, with a degree or two taken off, it works very nicely with a number of the dishes that pack a bit of heat to them. That is where the Test Kitchen Carbon used to be. It's now the Potluck Club, and well worth a visit. Just opened this week, but already filling up nicely into producing some terrific food. Now, this was a little earlier on today when I got roped in to be a junior assistant trainee substitute reserve intern judge at Wine Mag's interrogation of South African Shiraz, looking resplendent in Dutch orange. Christian Eads headlining as convener of judges, Meili Lambert joining us, and Dabo Dube. It was fascinating, and it was a real revelation in terms of just how tough it is to run through these wines and the kind of detail that you have to when you are a judge. Process went on most of today. They carry on tomorrow. Those results were prescient. Will be out the 16th of this month. But thanks to Christian and to Jax and the Wine Mag team for including me. It was a fascinating insight into the world of wine judging. And finally, this is new from Durbanville, something Constantia will be doing for a little while, and now Durbanville joining the bandwagon. This is their collective Sauvignon Blanc, where the different estates all chug some Sauvignon Blanc together for what is a broad celebration of Durbanville Hills Sauvignon Blanc. It's not too expensive. It's about 120 rand a bottle, I think, and it's all of the winemakers coming together. This one was Morgan Stain at De Grendel who oversaw it. The blue colours there celebrating the Dutch heritage that speaks to a lot of South Africa, that Delft blue in particular, and that wine now available. In fact, if you're around in Durbanville tomorrow, Friday evening, there is a tasting happening out in Atida, where you can go and sample this wine, a whole pile of others, have some snacks, and enjoy a signature wine out of Durbanville. Well, we don't have that on the menu this evening. What we do have is a number of things. Exceptional wine, great winemakers, and incredibly good-looking chefs. It's a wonderful combination for today. Matt Manning, welcome to the show.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming out.
It's a great pleasure. It's good to be back, one of my homes in Cape Town, and a place that every time I come does a couple of things. It reintroduces me to various mates, because there's always somebody I know who's in culture, sometimes under the bar, but generally somewhere around.
Under, over, on top of, usually.
I think Dave Wibberley actually sleeps here. I think he lives somewhere in your property.
There is the Spider Pig lair upstairs somewhere. Yes, he does spend a lot of time here.
And then there is also this collection of wine, which we mentioned. We did something on the show just a week or two ago, where you've managed to create a space that seems to defy a lot of economic basics, because you've got this staggering amount of wine. A lot of it is not inexpensive stuff, and with gay abandon, you're opening it left, right, and centre and pouring it for people. But it clearly works. You've been doing it for a while now, and the smile is still on the face.
Yeah, I can't give away too many secrets, but we have great relationships with some producers and winemakers, and we work hard to curate our wine list, and we have of course the wine library as well, which also has a cellar that houses nearly 5,000 bottles, which is made up of our members' wines. We don't own those wines, but we do sell them for our members, which gives us the opportunity to showcase those type of wines.
And library is a great word because it speaks to a broader academic space, and that's what this is. Yes, we have loads of fun and possibly have one or two glasses more than we should on occasion, but you learn so much. And every time I've come here, and I know you were threatening to give me something in a moment or two that I hadn't had before,
it's lining up,
but there's so much excitement to what you have on offer, because the range of wine is not just South Africa, but you've got stuff from really exotic and interesting places, and so the ability to educate yourself, to learn more about wine, is quite fundamental to what you do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what the wine's all about, and from when I first came to South Africa, that was when I really first got into wine, and the one thing that stood out for me was every time I went back to London was just the lack of representation of great South African wines, and I sort of set out to change that. And part of what we do here is not only make those great wines available by the glass, but also benchmark them alongside some of the best producers from around the world, so that you can have a Chardonnay from the UK and you can have a Chardonnay from Hemelanada or Elgin, and we put them on the same table so that our consumers can really appreciate the incredible quality that we produce in this country. And I think a lot of people don't actually understand that. What they see is Matt Manning opening a Premier Cru, and what they don't understand is that we're doing it so that people can appreciate the level of wine that we actually have in this country.
And I think that's been a huge part of what you do, and that the wine that you've introduced people to, and they're almost never going to buy the bottle if they've never heard of it before when they see it on a wine list at high 3, possibly 4 figures for a bottle. But here's a glass of a varietal I've never really heard of, wine from a country I didn't think even made wine. All right, I'll try that, and all of a sudden I've got this brand new discovery.
Well, exactly. And then another part of that is that, yes, it's by the glass, but also, should you want to enjoy a bottle, we don't do the standard markup of times it by, or make it 300%. We rather take the average price of what we make on a bottle of wine, or a bottle of South African, and then add a rand value markup onto those wines. So you can enjoy a Premier Cru that should cost you, 50 plus euros in Europe, but only cost you 30 euros in South Africa. So we're able to have things that a lot of places wouldn't. And also, when our tourists come over to see us, they're like, hold on a minute, is this price right? So but we do that with the joy of having people open those wines.
So you still got me at a 300% markup for the fellow Joe Burgers. We dream of a 300% markup at our restaurants. That would be amazing. Great that you've got that approach and that philosophy, and I think it translates into the sheer number of people who come. And I look at the wine luminaries. I think I've bumped into people like Emile Joubert here on a regular basis, which is always a great endorsement. Drinking all manner of wine, and one of those wines I'm going to try now because you have insisted that I try something that's obviously going to be horrible, which is an English Chardonnay.
Yes, it's terrible. Terrible Chardonnay. No, I'm joking. Perfect thing to cleanse your palate with.
Oh, there we go. So just to let you know what I've got in my glass before I hand it over, I bumped into, and again, this is the indication of the kind of people who hang out here. Michael van der Venter, who is the guardian of the Vinotech out at Distel. This is some 1974 Nederburg, so 4 years before I was born, and still in delightfully fresh and nubile condition. So I'll have the last mouthful of that. While I do that, tell me about this Chardonnay.
So all the way from England, I believe the fruit is actually grown in Kent or Surrey. And it's got the same terroir as what you'd find in Burgundy. And what's happening now is that the climate is actually changing in the UK to actually suit these type of wines, and we ended up with incredible quality Chardonnay that's being produced in England, and a lot of people that enjoy the wines from Burgundy tasted this blind and thought it was a Burgundian Chardonnay.
That would kill the French if they did a blind. That'd be worse than the Judgment of Paris, accidentally thinking that an English Chardonnay was from Burgundy.
Well, when I say a lot of people, I actually mean Alex Dale. So.
Well, it's one and the same thing, really. All right, well, let me give it a crack. And I'm fascinated to try this because I remember in the early days trying English bubbles and not getting very far with them because they were largely awful. And in a not terribly long period of time, English sparkling has improved dramatically. And now there seems to be a trend of still wine starting to catch up into a similar space.
Yeah. I mean, one of my favourite bubbles from the UK is actually Hambledon, but you can't get it here, and it's definitely my go-to when I visit London. A glass of Hambledon, and pop into a pub, glass of Hambledon and a Scotch egg.
What a beautiful combination! This is a beautiful combination: English vineyards and Chardonnay. Very crisp and tight. It's particularly good. So we're off to a good start, and we're going to continue that because we've got some terrific wine people to join us. And just looking at some of the brands who are with us, right? Dan really likes wine takeover tonight. We've got some vintage Cabernet Franc from the guys out at Warwick, who one of the standard bearers for Cabernet Franc. We've got a really exciting Riesling from Delheim, a German combination of South Africa. We've got Manny, who's been let loose from the cellar at Ellerman House, that is coming down to show us the Ellerman. Berene, who's just one of the great stories of South African wine. Seabelo, Senatla, Alex McFarlane. It's a pretty cool lineup this evening.
I just think you can taste all of that as well for $250.
Bang.
Amazing.
Magic. Look, thank you very much for having us down. It's always an absolute pleasure being here. Thank you for the Chardonnay, and we'll drink some more wine as the evening unfolds.
Absolutely.
There we go. Matt Manning, the man behind culture. And as he makes his way out to prepare my 11-course meal, which I'm going to be having with wine this evening, the first of our winemaking guests for tonight. And she is somebody who has been causing quite a ripple with a Riesling that she has put together of late. It's a Riesling that has got something quite remarkable about it. No, not just that it's excellent. No, not just that it's a grape that is perhaps not seen as much as we might like to. It's the fact that she's found a German with a sense of humour to make it with. And gee, they make for a terrific combination. In fact, I got to see this in person because it's only a few weeks since I was out at the farm, and you gave me a wine which followed on from a conversation we had, about a year or so ago, maybe a year and a half, when you first told me, this mad plan to bring back this German who'd allegedly worked with Delheim hundreds of years ago and make a Riesling together. And now you pulled it off.
I mean, it seems to be going well, so we did something right. I mean, it was a crazy plan with a crazy guy, and crazy things happened. And then the Riesling came about, and it's just been an amazing product. So we're quite excited with what we have, and hopefully somebody comes through and taste it as well. So
it kind of fits the Nongcebo story, because yours is a bit crazy. This kid who got a scholarship out of KwaZulu-Natal to decide to come and make some wine because that was the only thing available to you.
Yeah.
And now, not that further down the road, you are making cool wine. You're the head winemaker, and you have a permanent smile on your face.
I mean, once you find your passion in life, I think everything else just lines up. I think from that day in high school where I knew from then that wine was the way to go, I think it just, life sort of lined up. Like, okay, this is your route to your future. And things sort of lined up until I met Christoph, and I got to experience the crazy side of him. And it was just like, okay, this life is just going crazy. So let's just roll with it and go with it. And we came up with a nice product, so
certainly did. It's one, if you are coming down to Culture this evening, you're going to be able to try. It's a grape that South Africans by and large aren't that familiar with. We don't make a huge amount of Riesling.
Not at all.
This, therefore, is something of a groundbreaker. If somebody's coming down, you're behind the bar a little later, and they say to you, Nongcebo, why should I be drinking this? What's your answer?
Don't expect to be drinking Riesling. So that's all. I'm just gonna a spoiler that I'm gonna have. The whole concept around this wine was to go against the grain of the new world, go against the grain of the old world, go against the grain of the traditional packaging. So we just wanted to do everything against everything that everyone believes that was Riesling. And then we just came up with a nice product, and then we're like, it came out really well. The winemaking techniques that we applied in the cellar, the thinking around the wine, it was just so different that when you come here to actually taste this wine, I don't know, your mind is going to be blown. You're going to view different, view Riesling very differently. And I think, you're just going to be pleasantly surprised, actually. So
one of the things where I think South African winemaking has improved dramatically is in our realization that if we make wine on our own terms, rather than trying to make a Burgundian Chardonnay or a Californian Chardonnay or wine that somebody else has done before, we actually do so much better when we pay tribute to our own terroir. So is that the key to getting Riesling right in South Africa, not trying to copy something from the Mosel or from the German producing areas, and instead do something that really celebrates South Africa?
Exactly. I mean, I got a chance to also go to Germany last year to see all these areas that produce all these Rieslings, and I'm like, actually, we are so different in terms of terroir and everything that we have. So then why do we always try to copy what everyone else is doing? And this other thing that always has kept on popping up was that we're actually not a new world country. I mean, we've been producing wine close to 400 years. So actually, we're quite old in this game. So now to actually apply all that knowledge and what we know and the history of what wine is and where we are, it's just going to be a nice combination of something else and something different. And I mean, we've got South Africa's quite a nicely cultured country. So why don't we apply that to wine and have something unique and exciting for everyone else out there? So why not? So why not?
Wonderful philosophy. People are going to be coming down, are going to be sharing some wine, and they're going to be sharing this particular wine indeed. In fact, one of the sommeliers has just passed me a glass of this Riesling.
Oh, where's mine?
Hey, you're working, I'm not. While I'm drinking it, because that's my job, tell me a little bit about this evening in terms of you being a winemaker. We're going to have a lot of people coming down, enjoying this evening, enjoying culture, meeting new friends, catching up with old ones, possibly doing a little bit of dancing later in the night. You're here with a group of really top wine people. What is it like, still relatively early in your career, to now be with these kinds of winemakers to bump. Oh, look, here's Berene Sauls, one of the groundbreakers of wine out in the Hemelanado. Or here's Manny Cabello, who's been running wine out of Ellerman for so long. How cool is it now to be part of this family?
I know, I'm quite excited. I'm still overwhelmed and meeting everyone and trying to hear everyone's story and hear what everyone is doing currently. So it's really, really going to be exciting evening just for me, from my perspective. And it's going to be even more exciting to meet people that want to try our products and want to experience what we go through in the cellar. So I'm also actually looking forward to that and just having a nice experience tonight and probably dancing later on. So we never know.
We shall catch that on camera. Before I slip away, so this is the Riesling. It's not sort of the cabinet style. It's not overly sweet. It's a South African Riesling, and I'm not going to tell you more about it. You're going to have to come down to Culture yourself and come and see us and come and try some of it. But suffice to say, even in the few weeks since we last had it, it's already just unwound a little bit more. It's already a little bit open, a little bit more inviting, which is terrific.
Exactly. So just imagine 6 months down the line, a year down the line, it's just going to be even more crazy, even more amazing. So cheers.
Thank you so much for coming through. Great to be behind the bar with you this evening and sharing some terrific wine.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
There we go. I remember the first time we had Nongcebo on the show, she was an assistant winemaker and told me next time I spoke to her, she'd be the head winemaker. She'll probably be the CEO of Delheim by the time we have her on the show next. As she makes her way off to ready the Riesling for the advancing hordes, we're going to be catching up with a small man from South America who is a good friend of mine. He's been a good friend of Dan Really Likes Wine for many, many years. He used to work on a cruise ship. Nobody knows what he did on it. I think it might have involved dancing and a pole, but he's found himself now in South Africa and is the man behind that extraordinary cellar at Ellerman House. Manny, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Dan. Nice to having me.
Oh, it's great to have you here. And great to have you here on what is a bit of a landmark evening, because if I'm not mistaken, this is going to be the first time that the Ellerman, your landmark flagship wine out of Ellerman House, is being poured in Cape Town outside of Ellerman House.
Yeah, that's actually true. We never actually share the wine in town. So I was very excited actually we get the invitation, and great to share it, the wine is to share, to see what people think about it, and super excited about it. Yeah.
It's obviously a great collaboration because you've got one of the iconic luxury properties of the world combined with one of the great modern winemakers in Erica Obermeyer, and that combination has proved itself incredibly successful. Give us a snapshot since you launched this, and it was very much your idea, how well it's done and what the response has been like over a few years.
It's been amazing. I mean, we showcasing today the 2019, which is our second vintage. 18 is being sold out. We didn't do a lot. You know the story, but it was all about create a wine with sense of place, and not just on the grape, but the personality of the property, what the property has to offer, and how do you translate that into wine. Erica is amazing to work with. She got an amazing side that she worked with and allow us to find the best sort of a component for this wine. We are excited. I mean, this is our second vintage. We have done 3 already, successfully all being well received. Yeah.
It's quite a challenge in terms of who you are. People see the Ellerman House brand. They're expecting something that's pretty sensational. They're also, though, suspecting, I'd imagine, maybe something a little different to this, because they might be waiting for something that's big and bold and that showcases that kind of, show-stopping side of Ellerman House. Instead, you've gone for something that's very different to that.
That's a very good point, because people have that perception of the property. It's like it's a big property, fuddy-duddy kind of thing, very serious, and we're not. We are not at all. In fact, we're more funky than actually what you think, and we are pro-show, and the property is fresh, it's light, it's vibrant, so I think that's what we wanted the wine to showcase, At the same time, serious, the one that you can put away for some time, but then also one you can drink it too. With lunch, with dinner, without food. In fact, it's a very versatile wine, and that's what we wanted to basically portray with the blend.
It's a wine that celebrates Ellerman House, and Ellerman House for me is often a really good gauge. It's a weather bell for how tourism is doing in Cape Town, in particular South Africa in general. I remember staying at Ellerman House in one of the villas with my family. It was wonderful. It was COVID. We're the only people there. We had just the most amazing time. We probably
That's the time you took the key for the cellar, isn't it?
That's right. I might still have it.
Yeah, I'll have a bill from you. We have to send you.
We'd probably struggle to do the same now, though, because every time I've come to Ellerman, it's looked fairly busy. Are things back to full throttle?
We've been very blessed, actually, after COVID. I think it turned around even better for us. It's that kind of property that people want to spend on. We're not big, we only have 13 rooms and 2 villas, so we're constantly busy. When we're full, we're not really open to the public. So it's been very nice. I mean, it's running pretty up, I would say 80-70% occupancy right through winter. So it's good. It's fun. Yeah.
Key question for you before we let you get back to the bar and start pouring some of this terrific wine. You've got a choice. You are locked in for one night. You can drink whatever you want, and your choice is the Ellerman House cellar or the room upstairs here at Culture.
Wow. I think we'll be the cellar for sure, yeah, because I know what I got there.
Yeah, you've drunk half of that already.
Yeah, it's still working out. Yeah.
There are. Look, it is a wonderful cellar. If you haven't been to Ellerman House, you get the chance. It's not only one of the most beautiful properties in South Africa, but that cellar is extraordinary, and it's full of this particular wine. And this is a wine people can come down and drink this evening, Manny.
Awesome. Excited about it.
There we go. Manny Cabello, Chile's greatest ever export. Although they're playing in the Rugby World Cup next year at Chile, so even more to celebrate from that little corner of South America. The Ellerman, made by Erica Obermeyer. She's making such extraordinary wine at the moment. The elegance and the finesse of the wine that she's making, the purity of fruit that she delivers is magnificent. And this, in the form of the Ellerman, is another great example. All right, let's say goodbye to Manny and say hello to the mayoress of Tesselaarsdal, who is fast becoming one of South Africa's most famous wine people. And again, there's some really cool stories coming up on Dan Really Likes Wine, because a few weeks ago, as you've probably seen on our social media, I was out where I got to meet what appeared to be the first person in South Africa who has a rock farm, because she has 16 hectares of stones, rocks, and one giant rabbit. But it is the platform for a very, very special piece of wine territory. Berene, welcome. Lovely to see you.
Thank you. Very nice to be here, Dan.
And to see you here. The last time we saw you was a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago now, out in the farm. I think when we saw you, you were just about ready to start planting some vines and getting ready. What progress since then?
Yes, so the soil preparation is still underway. And there was one unforeseen hiccup, like in life. So the planting has been pushed out to 2024. So now the first vintage of the Tesselaarsdal Pinot Noir, from Tesselaarsdal will see the light in 2031.
Oh,
If there isn't another hiccup, hopefully not.
the patience you need to make wine. And yet you've got that, and the money, because it is this manifestation of the dream. And I know you're going to get there, and you will, and it's very much on that horizon. How much easier it is to get that patience when you're able to, in the interim, drink stuff like this.
No, that's true, Dan. Look, this is a spoil for me because, it breaks my heart to open a bottle of Tesselaarsdal, right? So it's quite a treat for me here tonight at Culture, and being on a show and having my wines here to show to the people. I mean, I'm so proud of it. It's the 2022 vintage of Pinot. And so meanwhile, while we are enjoying the wine here, the experimental blocks of vineyards is resting in Tesselaarsdal. So all things good.
Yeah. The trips you've done of late, I was having a little look on social media earlier today. I think you've been off in the Netherlands in the last little while, and it wasn't that long ago. I think you were in America. You've been all over the place. This journey that wine is taking you on, it's quite remarkable.
It is. It was my first time in the Netherlands. So I can almost say my first time in the EU. And after that, I had to go through to just quickly to Dublin, Ireland. And I didn't do a visa because I saw on Google you don't need one for Ireland. But then everyone was saying in the Netherlands, they're going to stop you. And I've watched enough Border Patrol to know that they will. And so I was so nervous. I was sweating when I went, into Ireland. And then this guy didn't even look at my passport. He just opened up and said, "Hi, from South Africa," and stamped it. And off I went. So
Brilliant.
yeah, life lessons.
And what wine has been able to do for you is terrific. But you've also returned that favour because you have introduced not just your wine to so many people, but to your story. And I think it's worth repeating one that captivated me so much. Some friends of mine who'd been on a tasting that you were on a few years ago during lockdown, so taken by your story that something rather special happened as a result.
Yes, so thank you for making that happen. I met Matt at actually the Ellerman House, and he was so fascinated about the story, as you mentioned, that he awards every female employee of his if they hit target or anything special with a bottle of Tesselaarsdal. And he also told me that story, and he actually placed an order, like a pre-order for magnums and like the whole thing. So that was so touching and so special. So I'm seeing them actually end of September in the UK.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so I'm visiting there. So
and all this leads into this great story of yours, this tableau of what you've done and the adventure you've had. How conscious are you of the impact that you have on young women in the wine industry, but also just people in Tesselaarsdal, which is a small community. It's not by any means a particularly wealthy community, but you are now somebody who's made it big and made it proper. How aware are you of the impact that you have on people as a result?
Yes, it's actually a good thing and it's a difficult thing. But once I'm established on my property, my goal all the while has been just to empower. I want to give someone the same opportunity that was given to me. And when that opportunity arrives, especially when I'm on Tesselaarsdal, I want to educate and I want to empower, and that's always been the end goal. Yeah.
And you do that in so many ways, partly because you're just always a delight to spend time with, but also because you deliver wine, and it's your story is backed up by some really high quality product, and it's quality that speaks to the broader Hemel Valley on its own terms. We were speaking a moment ago with Caroline about not trying to make about not trying to make Riesling in a German style, make them South African style if it's South African. And I think that's very much the case with Hemel the Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. We're not trying to make a Burgundian style. We're trying to make something that really shows off what we have to offer.
I think the Ellerman House, especially the Pinot Noir and the Chardonnays from there, is outstanding. It's up there with the rest of the quality wines. We often reference back to Burgundy, but our climate and soil is almost similar also. So we just do the best version in South Africa. Very good Pinots and Chardonnays from that area. Yeah.
You
there will probably be a better Pinot from the Overberg. Just kidding. No, I'm not.
There's no shortage of self-confidence to the Tesselaarsdal brand. The wine that you are making, we're going to be tasting this evening, along with all of the others, and you get to hang out with a whole lot of really cool wine people. And that's also a big part of your own story, because there is nobody in the Hemel Valley who hasn't been annoyed, cajoled, harassed, harangued by Berene Sauls to come and help out with the project at some point.
That's true. That's very true, Dan. I don't see any of them that I harassed in the past. Maybe Emilio Bear.
You can harass him as much as you want.
Yeah, he's here to use and abuse. And no, I'm very blessed to be in the company of very good talent and winemakers here tonight. And I'm looking forward to socialize, go hard, and go home.
Well, go hard and see where it goes from there. Final one, people who are coming down, just give us an understanding from your perspective. What is it about a glass of Tesselaarsdal Pinot Noir that really makes it stand out from the crowd?
The Tesselaarsdal Pinot Noir for me is a very personal brand, and the wine itself, the process involved, just a quick story, we do still do foot stomping. And then for my sons, I think winemaker Emil Ross let me do the foot stomping. But that is just to add enough structure to the wine itself. The grapes is from the Ellerman House, and the Ellerman House delivers beautiful. The grapes delivers beautiful wines, and I think that in all sense for the Tesselaarsdal has been consistent throughout the first vintage. So bright red fruit and just a beautiful, well-made Pinot, which I'm very proud of.
I have two things to do. I have this wine to finish, and then I have to go and amend my diary, because I had 2030 in my diary for the launch of the first Tesselaarsdal wine of origin Pinot Noir.
Yeah.
I have to push that out to 2031.
2031.
But it shall be in the diary nonetheless.
Yes.
Very lovely to have you.
Thank
you for being with us this evening. One of our rock star producers who joins us for our Dan Really Likes Wine takeover at Culture Wine Bar, and featuring on Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Norman Goodfellows this evening, live from First Thursdays in Cape Town. with the weekend now already 5 hours underway in Cape Town, such is the religious work ethic of people in the mother city. We've got one of them we've hauled in from Stellenbosch, and I'm delighted to see him because he's a good mate of mine and he's always great fun, but particularly so because he has roped in some rather expensive Cabernet Franc from years gone by from an estate that is one of the leading producers thereof. So Tom Orpen joins us out from Warwick as I hand over my Tesselaarsdal and instead say hello to some vintage Cabernet Franc and to Mr. Orpen. Tom, welcome. Lovely to have you here, lovely to have you on the show, and lovely to have you with a glass of Cabernet Franc in hand.
Well, I mean, I was forced, really. My hands were forced by yourself, and I know it's one of your favorites, so it's lovely to be here. Thanks for having us.
Tell me a bit about the history of Cabernet Franc within the context of Warwick, because my understanding of it has always been that one of the first real champions of Cabernet Franc on its own was Norma Ratcliffe.
That's 100% true. Norma was the first winemaker in South Africa to produce a single cultivar Cabernet Franc from Stellenbosch. And you know, the beautiful thing about the site that we're on, we are in the northernmost part of Stellenbosch, so it provides us with a lovely ripening window for the particular varietal, and just vintage after vintage, it continues to impress. And you know, Norma being innovative with spirits, just thought, why not? And that's what she did, and she's done every vintage ever since. Unfortunately, there's not a huge amount around anymore, but we do what we can.
I had lunch with Berene yesterday, who's also a great champion of Cabernet Franc and makes some delightful stuff. And he was inspired by drinking it as a single varietal in the cellar when still at Blauklippen in the, I think, late 90s, and said, I'm going to make one of these one day. And now he's got about 3 of them. And he saw something there in Cabernet Franc, which obviously Norma did as well, but which a lot of other South African winemakers, I don't think did, whether that was because they didn't believe there was a market for it or whether they just didn't quite see as much potential as we now know there to be. Norma's changed that around. How much is the South African consumer embracing and enjoying Cabernet Franc on its own as opposed to the best supporting actor in a Bordeaux blend role?
Well, I mean, I think our first vintage was in 1989, and I think the industry as a whole, you know, Brewer being one of them, has taken to it, and it's gone from in leaps and bounds. The consumer itself, I think it's still in its infancy, so to speak. It's still considered a blending varietal, to be honest, and it is in most red blends, especially the more serious premium wines in South Africa. But is really shining a phenomenal light on a spectacular varietal, and I think we're getting there. I think we make some pretty special wines.
And also shining light on years gone by, because the wine you bought here is not fresh out of the vines, fresh out of the cellar. This has got a bit of age to it. And before we talk about the wine itself, just that ability of Cabernet Franc. We've now had a number of wines over the last few years together from the Warwick cellars that go back a decade and more. And this is a wine that just develops such a beautiful richness and silkiness and substance as it gets older and turns from something already pretty damn good into something remarkable.
Absolutely. So 2 amazing things came out of 2007. John Smith lifted the World Cup for the second time for the Springboks. And this particular vintage was on its way. And it was a special vintage. At the time, not a classic. And as you said, it's developed beautifully. One of the beautiful things about this varietal is its acidity. I mean, if we taste it and we smell it now, you know, it's still there. It's still so apparent. There's still so much fruit on a 16-year-old bottle of wine. It's just quite remarkable.
One of the criticisms of Cabernet Franc when it's not made to its peak is it can get a bit herbaceous, it can get a bit green, but when it's made the right way, you don't get that. What is it about Stellenbosch where I can think about a number of estates now who I think are making some lovely Cab Franc brewers, one of them, the guys at Rainbow's End are another. What is it generally about Stellenbosch that lends itself to great Cabernet Franc?
Sure, that's a very challenging question for just the marketing guy, Dan, but I'll give it a crack. I honestly believe that it's the uniqueness of the terroir. You know, we underneath the Simonsberg Mountain there, decomposed granites, lovely deep clay soils. You know, Stellenbosch is probably more well known for its Cabernets and its Chardonnays, but you know, for Cabernet Franc, you know, we've got those beautiful hot summer days and those cool nights. And this particular vintage had a lovely, cool ripening season as well. So it's very dependent on the situation, the environment, and I think Stellenbosch lends itself to that.
Now, this is the wine you and I are drinking on the show because we're extra special. You are showcasing something just as special this evening for people who are coming along to Culture. It's a slightly newer, slightly younger, slightly fresher Cabernet Franc, but one that, having had a taste earlier on this evening, is already very much hitting its stride. Tell us a little bit about the wine that's on offer this evening.
So the 2016 Cabernet Franc in Magnums, which is a very special treat. I managed to arm wrestle JD, which is no mean feat, to allow me into the Vinotech. 3 years into the drought in the Western Cape, so the vines were under a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. Yields were very much down, but the quality was exceptional. You look at some of the classics, you look at 2015, looking at 2017, those will go down arguably as some of the greatest vintages that we produced. And the 2016 can't be overlooked. So it's a very special wine, as you say, quite youthful compared to this 2007, but it's developing very nicely. Looking forward to tasting it.
We have a long night ahead. You're going to be pouring plenty of that Cabernet Franc. Having had a look around this quite extraordinary home of wine, anything else that's grabbed your attention? You're going to be slipping a glass or two down on?
Well, I'm really, first time I'm tasting the Riesling, to be honest, and I'm incredibly impressed. So there will be a few more of those going down, no doubt about it. And Manny's been talking a big game about the new element, so I'm excited.
It's definitely worth it.
It's going to be a good evening.
You're always a great friend of Dan, really likes wine. Appreciate you being through, and we look forward to a great night tonight.
Cheers.
There you go. Tom Orpen, Executive Head Cabernet Franc at Warwick, joining us this evening. And there is a lot of Warwick to be poured, so if you haven't got your plans made yet for First Thursday in Cape Town, then Culture is exactly where you need to be. Now, we are hoping that Seabelo Senatla will be joining us before we wrap up the show, the DHL Stormers and Blitzbox wing, and also possibly Alex McFarlane joining us as well. But in the interim, we just happen to have an Uber wine celebrity floating about, so we're going to lure him in, particularly because he had a really interesting trip over to France not that long ago. His name is Emile Joubert. He is a not unfamiliar face on Dan Really Likes Wine, and he did a trip of late, which we've got an opportunity to have a quick chat to about. Emile, welcome. Lovely to have you here.
In from the bench.
No,
They call the guys the Springbok
An
guys.
impact player.
The bomb squad.
Yes, you are the bomb squad for Dan Really Likes
So
Wine.
nobody pitches for your show. So you got to haul in the crowd.
Well, we were supposed to have a rugby player. We've gone for somebody equally athletic and chiseled. And
Absolutely. I'm glad you recognise the company. I would quibble his vicious feel if you saw that.
yeah, we'd probably have to have the camera a little bit further back. I'm delighted not just to have you here because it's always great to catch up.
First
with
time
you.
personally in life. Yeah.
Well,
It's always been at a distance.
It has
I
indeed.
could see who you are. I could feel that mutual Irish aura, being a quarter Irish myself. So I want to send a special shout out to Tesselaarsdal from Delheim.
Yeah.
We just flew to Dublin to watch Bruce Springsteen. Without any tickets, by the way. You'll find that. But anyway, so nice to have you.
I have a great Bruce Springsteen in Dublin story to tell you a little later on, but we will
We'll
get to
catch
that.
up. You also want to get down to the serious stuff, so I'm ready for you.
Well, what I do want to ask is a story that I think is so enchanting, and I love reading your column, and you give such a great insight into so many different corners, and your views on the recent harvests have been terrific from a life wine perspective.
It's been fantastic.
all
Really,
done.
it's been great. Just waxed it.
Tell me about this trip of a pure romance and history that you went on, where together with the team from De Wetzel, you went back to the very vineyard, which is South Africa's home of Chardonnay.
Well, one of them. No, it goes back. I grew up with a lot of family stories, and the one was the story of the Clos de Mouche vineyard, it's owned by Joseph Drouin in Beaune. Vineyard was planted in 1921, and the house of Joseph Drouin, very famous Burgundian producer. They got various vineyards. They got Musigny, and they got Corton, Charlemagne, and so forth. But there was a vineyard called Clos de Mouche, and in 1981, South Africa had about 25 hectares of Chardonnay planted. And then Dani de Wet, on De Wetzel, was trying to get Chardonnay legally into South Africa, but the powers that be were having none of it. It was like trying to get Dalton into Dublin. You just could not do it. And it happens, luck would have it, there was a chap called Jan Boerlang Coetzee, you might remember.
Do indeed.
He was working in Burgundy for the House of Drouin, learning about, he just left Canoncop, and he was learning about Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. And so Dani said, listen to Jan, I've got to get some good Chardonnay material into South Africa because to hell with the authorities, I am going to plant great Chardonnay in Robertson. So Jan said, I've got just the vineyard for you. And he went to the Clos de Mouche vineyard. It's outside the town of Bonn, up on the hills, about 320 meters, southeast facing. And Jan selected a couple of cuttings, which then he had to get back to South Africa in 1981. DHL wasn't happening, Norway Aromatics and so forth. But then my father, who was a friend of Jan and of Dani, happened to swing by Berene to say hello to Jan. And they convinced him to take this parcel back into South Africa. And my dad, being quite one for drama and so forth, he was waiting for a bit of interrogation at the airport in Johannesburg. One of those sticks of vineyard in your bag, what is going to be. They just allowed him through. And anyway, those vines were propagated by Dani. And they planted in 1987, planted the Batelier vineyard, which is still producing the Batelier Chardonnay today. So that is the intro. And then a couple of weeks back, Johan de Vet from de Wetshof and I, and two other chaps from de Wetshof, we went over to Bonn. And we did a pilgrimage. So on a very sort of coolish, I think it was a Thursday. We drove up through the town of Bonn into this vineyard, and it was just actually, look, we're emotional, Dad. We've got an Irish connection. We've got sentimentality. So did I shed a tear?
I think you did.
Not quite, but I had a big glass of Batelier Chardonnay in the vineyard. Just to stand there in that very vineyard where 42 years ago, those vines were cut and sent down to the vet, so it's quite emotional. But that's what Burgundy does to you. I mean, every trip I go there, and I've only been there 4 or 5 times, but I mean, every time you go there, and yes, we do talk of Burgundian wines and referencing Pinot Noir, Chardonnay de Burgundy, and the great prices and the great brands. But you go to that piece of earth, and I wouldn't say I want to become one of those Cistercian monks who made the wine there 900 years ago, but it really is a gorgeous experience. To see now the still plying of horses, not as a tourist gimmick, but really that's what they believe in, tilling the soil, and I was doing that while we were there, which was in March. Smelling the earth of the Montrachet vineyard, going to the Clos de Mouche, the rocky vineyard, and just this desolate, bare vine standing there, and you really kind of feel that wine is a spiritual product. I mean, I'm not clever enough to learn about malolactic fermentation, site-specific wild, and this sort of thing. Just to stand and feel that aura, it really gets to you. Come with me sometime, Dan.
I am on that list.
We'll have a Guinness and a Clos de Mouche.
I am on that list. I cannot wait to get there. Possibly in tandem with the South Africans winning a World Cup a little later on this year.
Half of the course. I mean,
I do want to ask you.
They were just bibbering a little bit. They were trying to send in one of their horses to play locks for them against the Springboks. The French were very cocky until you actually arrive and you ask them, what are your chances? And they kind of think, it's a bit familiar.
Maybe not so much. I do want to ask you quickly, having done all of that, nothing to go over for any great wine lover, Burgundy, Bordeaux, the pilgrimages to make as a wine drinker. But when you come to a place like this, to culture, and you look up and you see the sheer selection of wine, great international sitting alongside great South Africans, one of the things I've always found when I've gone to international wine destinations is, as good as the wine is, I don't ever feel, well, gee, I wish our South African wine was as good as this. Yes, there are individual bottles that stand out, going, wow, that's benchmark stuff. But I don't ever feel that we sit in the shadow.
Dan, I'm just such a geek. I walk into this place and I get little shivers. I felt that they're walking into, I wouldn't say my first massage parlor, but I mean, walking into a rugby museum in France or New Zealand or so, or a great, we're speaking about, we've got a great mutual interest in First World War air fighter photographs.
Of course we do.
In Berene in New Zealand, they've got this great museum, but you walk in here and you just see these names, and it's like a National Geographic list. And I was looking at that dark Priya Montrachet, which I tasted from barrel. I tasted the 2021 vintage, and my mind sees those vineyards, it sees the places. It just reminds you that wine is a universal product, but it brings the world together, and it's just exciting. And I think it's great that we can. I'm a beauty show game for good reason. I don't believe in saying, yeah, do we make Pinot Noirs like Burgundy or Shiraz like Lorraine and so on. To me, the excitement is looking at that wine it's experiencing its own characteristics, its own uniqueness, and feeling that excitement it generates. And this wine is really fantastic. And Matt made a very important point about the markups. I mean, you guys enjoy the prices never issue. And sometimes we have to look at this, and I mean, to come here and to be able to drink a slice of the world of wine, whether how loyal to South Africa you are or not, or just be in this company as a South African and seeing these wines here in Cape Town makes me very proud. And I think we should have a couple more places like this. So congratulations to Alex and Maxim to put this together, because we need this.
Well, you have got much wine to sample this evening. I'll drink some more of it with you. Thank you for dropping in and thank you for sharing the story about Burgundy.
But it's there, man. It's there anytime.
Thank you. One of South Africa's great wine writers, one of South Africa's great wine characters, as a special guest here this evening. Now, if it's all got a little louder, a little more raucous, that's because something of a celebrity occasion has occurred in through the door in designer gear, looking like he's just left the Met Gala. And arrived in downtown Cape Town. A part-time rugby player, full-time wine enthusiast, Seabelo Senatla.
How you doing, my champion?
So good to see you.
Awesome to see you. Always know it is.
And welcome to a space that you and I know is very much a home for you. But for most people, hang on, what is this elite, chiseled athlete doing outside of a rugby field when, in fact, much as rugby is something you're rather good at, this wine world is a space that's pretty close to the heart.
Most certainly. I think for me, it's all about getting out of that space, where it's just rugby orientated and trying to live out other passions of mine. Staying in Stellenbosch, one has to somewhat find his way into the wine field. And I found myself there. Making something of mine. So yeah, it's one of my passions, like I said, and it's very nice to share with people like you, people that love wine, and we get to enjoy wine together and share conversations.
That's it. But people often think, well, professional sports people, you live on a diet of boiled chicken breasts and brown rice and celery, and you go to gym 11 hours a day, and your life is really one-dimensional. And I think that for some people, PSPs, it can be, but there is a real richness to life by having a sense of balance. And I would suggest, with absolutely no scientific backing, that you are a better rugby player and a more complete person for having that sort of balance and for having something like wine that gives you this, let's escape rugby entirely and jump into a completely different world.
That is absolutely correct. I like to call myself a more whole person. Like you said, I always knew that rugby is one part of me, not my entirety. So having had the knowledge, and shooting for things that I've always loved, and things that I always had passions for, like it allows me to actually push it out for the game. Like you said, I'm not just thinking about rugby always, but rugby, yes, it's there, and it's a big portion of my life right now. But I get to go home and focus on wine and focus on things that I'm interested in. It kind of like keeps me fresh, because you're not thinking about one thing constantly. So the burnout is quite in the longer space if you do that, I guess.
Your philosophy reminds me a lot of that of another great South African athlete, Faf du Plessis. Faf must message me pretty much every day, and it's never about cricket. He's found a new wine, or can you introduce me to, or what do you think of? He is obsessed with wine.
I'm about to do that too, by the way. He just gave me an idea.
But what he does when he travels, and it's a little difficult playing IPL, the wine options in India are sometimes somewhat limited, but when he's off touring Australia and he's got a day out, he's off at Penfolds for the day, or he's able to do that. Has that been a part of your rugby career, discovering wine around the world?
I kind of discovered it quite late. I'm actually one side about that, because while I was playing service and I was going everywhere, I've been doing a lot of that, tasting a lot of wine, and kind of adapting my palate to different tastes. But now that I'm a little bit older and I'm a little more free to do stuff, I think these things come with age as well. Once you're younger, you think that rugby's a world, but you start opening up and the world starts getting bigger. Once I'm here with the knowledge that I know now, definitely when you go away, that's one of the first things I do. I go find a wine farm, I get to go at a bar, whatever the case may be, and just sit and enjoy the wine and that culture, and hear the stories about how that came about and why it's important for them, and why it's such a thing of heritage for them. Those are the best stories ever, because you feel like you're integrating so much to society and the way of living life. Wine is not just something that you drink and pretty much get drunk off and stuff like that. It tells a story. There's a lot of stories to these things, and you kind of like learn a place better while consuming their wine. They'll tell you a lot of stories about the place.
And initially, that was kind of where your wine interest went up to. I am Seabelo, the wine drinker. I'm finding about some wine, the stories behind it. That's changed a bit now because you are taking in that wine as Seabelo, the wine maker, and consciously or subconsciously thinking, how does this compare to my wine? It's a different space you're in there.
It is. Well, you try to not be biased a lot. I try to keep grounds neutral. Even tonight, I'm going to try and do that. I taste other people's wine. It's tough though because once you have something that you hold very close to you, kind of bury it and keep it close to your heart. But it's always good to go out there and keep yourself open. Like I said, this is how I got there. I got here by just being open and opening myself to different worlds. And look at me now, I have a wine brand sitting next to the dead nickels of the world. That is good.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here this evening, to be sharing this wine. For people who haven't had it before, they're perhaps coming down this evening to join us at Culture. It's a 7 varietal blend. As a 7's great, that's understandable. Made with idiom. Give us an introduction to what people can taste.
Yes, like you said, it's a 7 varietal blend produced by Idiom. A lot of people are skeptical about this because obviously I'm just a beer player, right? It's like, what do you know about making wine? So they produce the juice. Yes, it has my story. Yes, I was involved with the whole part of it. I was actually involved in everything. But yeah, that's literally what you summed it up pretty nicely. I didn't have to say anything. It's a murmur from our 7's rugby career. I say career because the 7's part is done. Now we're just focusing on 15s, and I just had to give a tip of the hat because it's quite highlighted. I just wanted something that's tangible that I can celebrate it with, and this is this amazing.
We're going to be drinking a fair amount of that this evening. We're not the only ones. Before I let you go and prepare for your duty as barman this evening, I must ask you an important question. We have got, as a guest tonight, he's coming along to join us, a guy called Hashiba Diamani. Do you think there's enough wine in this bar for him if he gets into post-URC victory mode?
Definitely not. We shouldn't get in there. We need the final. People against the player, so we're going to be keeping actually the show. After the final in Ireland, then we'll come back and do a rerun of this.
All right. Well, the wine's on us when you do that. Thanks for coming through. Looking forward to a terrific night. And well done on producing something really cool for the Seabelo Senatla legacy.
Thank you so much. Come to guys,
we are indeed. Seabelo Senatla, star of the world of rugby, is Glory Wine. 7 varietals into one, which just about wraps us up. We've only got one final guest to join us on the show, and she arrives having just failed her driving test for the 7th time and arrived at high speed to go and join us on the show. We had her on the live show a few weeks ago, now in person with me at Culture. Alex, welcome.
Thank you.
Let's go to the honest answer. How did the driving test go?
It went better than I thought. I wasn't expecting to pass.
No, congratulations. Added reason to celebrate, but then you've had a few of those over the last few years because this McFarlane wine brand has gone from what? I've never heard of them to something that just the other day I said to Michael Fridge on, I'd like to give you a wine you've never heard of before. He said, no, I've had all of those. They're really good. So having quite an impact.
Yeah. No, I think the more time I've spent in the trade, the more people are picking up on us and we're starting to get our wines out there, which is actually quite surreal, but it's dream come true, and I just hope everyone just keeps enjoying the wine and keeps buying and keeps buying.
You've got a wine this evening you're sharing with us that I'm fascinated by, both because it's in an area where I think South Africa is really maturing as a wine drinking audience. That's not meant to be patronizing, it's just we're discovering rosé as I think it should be, but also because you've thrown into your rosé a couple of wines that we don't often see sitting together.
Yeah, so there's a component of Semillon in here, and the wine is made as a white wine, so it's a whole bunch of pressed like my whites, and then it goes to barrel for its fermentation. It's stirred on the lees, and I was looking at this wine at the blending time, and it just didn't have the palate that I wanted. And because I'm not bound by any rules, I had some Semillon, and I did a blend trial to look at what the Semillon would do to bring some good palate to the party. And it worked beautifully. And I'm really glad I did it because it's something different. It makes people say, excuse me, a little bit. But I think it makes the wine serious, spicy, and also something that's still enjoyable.
Indeed, it's completely approachable. It's all those things you said, but it's still not a wine that you have to be some weird wine geek to want to go and drink. And I think that's all the wine of yours that I've drunk. It's not casual, throwaway, cheerful, but it's nothing that's going to intimidate people. It's wine that brings everybody together every time we've had it at home.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm aiming for. We still want to make serious wines. We want to take wines that you can really take notice of. But there's nothing more disappointing than wine. People feeling intimidated by it, and they should never feel intimidated by it. So it must be very approachable, but also leaning to the serious side for the real serious wine.
A great part of Culture Wine Bar, a great part of a night like this is being able to introduce people to wine that they might not normally buy, might not normally drink. And for a lot of South Africans there, rosé is not on their horizon, or they know that it's sickly sweet and luminous pink and it's going to give you diabetes in 10 minutes, and then they get to drink something like this. So a night like this evening, we got the chance to convert lots of people to a style of wine that they probably haven't had a huge amount of.
Yeah, I think, I think I could have brought one of my Cinsos, and I think people are starting to wake up to Cinso. But a rosé, I'm very excited to get people to change their minds a little bit and to push their boundaries and just say, give it a try, you might actually like it. And 99% of the time they're like, it's not what I was expecting. And yeah. So,
you're presenting this wine amongst some pretty cool wine people tonight, which is terrific. And tonight we're mostly just drinking the wine, but a space I'm seeing rosé gravitate towards more and more is actually eating food with rosé. And for so long, the rosé, okay, well, we'll stick a little umbrella in it, and maybe a piece of fruit on the side, and sit by the side of the pool. That serious element of it is translating into culinary companion as well.
Yeah, I think I always try when we're doing tasting notes with people in the industry, especially in the restaurants, to think what would I like to eat with my wines at home. And I think the thing that springs to mind with this is an enormous plate of salmon roses. Every time I drink this, I think of salmon roses, and it's like a big plate. Go to bed at night thinking about this rosé and salmon roses. So I think often we want to talk about wine and how wine's enjoyable and we've got to have this really nice glass, but in reality most people are enjoying it with something to eat. And if you've got something in mind, it's really nice to give whoever might be buying your wine an idea of what that is, because it might just inspire them to have it on the bottle, or also just really enjoy it that much more because they're having it.
It's a great philosophy to have. You're here tonight alongside some benchmark South African brands. Warwick here tonight, Delheim here tonight, and also with some of the real rock stars, people like Berene and Tesselaarsdal, brands that are very much in the spotlight. That says quite a lot about where McFarlane's got in a pretty short space of time.
I think it's because I know someone there.
Only because that's where you deserve to be.
Thank you. No, it's really great to be here. And up until now, because I was still working full time doing something else, I wasn't really able to rush around and do these types of things. So it's an absolute pleasure coming to be here for McFarlane Wines, everyone else, all the other great industry colleagues. It's like,
Well, it is a delight to have you here. You do have some work to do though, because I'm going to make you work behind the bar.
I've already been working and I'm there to work more. It's fine.
Well, thank you so much for being through and for sharing the wine. And we look forward to a great night here.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan.
There we go. Our final guest for this evening, wrapping up a very special live broadcast of Dan Really Likes Wine with Norman Goodfellows from Culture Wine Bar as we take over the bar en masse and give you a great night out. If you're here to join us, and there is still the opportunity, if you get down, there are a few tickets left. There's live music here. That's going to be playing for about 9 o'clock. Matt Manning, chef, will work some magic. And you have the combination of everybody you've seen here this evening, each delivering a very special wine and each delivering something very different indeed. So a big thank you to all of our guests, not just for being on the show this evening, but also for joining us behind the bar and working hard. And in particular, a big thank you to Mr. Seabelo, who dropped in and gave us a little cameo. Some great columns you should be reading on a weekly basis. I'm off to do some work behind the bar, the first time since university days, serving some terrific wine and culture. I do hope to see some of you a little later on this evening. Don't forget, if you are doing some wine shopping, our Haute Cabriere competition that is running the chance to win a fine dining experience at either the Nines, Bel Punto, or Marble with David Higgs, valued at £15,000. Rand. That is if you buy any bottle of Haut Cabrières at Norman Goodfellows during the month of May. I will see you back again live on Thursday from South Africa, but on Monday the show comes to you from Paris as we celebrate the city of love, the city of light, and with the glorious World Sports Awards on a Monday in Paris, the city of sports as well, and a little bit of wine thrown in for good measure. Come and join us at Culture. Have a great evening if not. We'll see you again next week. Here's a look at that great offer with Haut Cabrières and a fine dining prize on offer. Until next week, goodbye. In the month of May, your chance to win a fine dining experience with Norman Goodfellows, Haut Cabrières, and Dan Really Likes Wine. Simply buy any bottle of Haut Cabrières wine. That could be a bottle of the Pierre Jourdain Bubbles or one of their still wines, including the brand new Reserve range, and you'll go into the draw to win a night out for 2 people for a fine dining experience valued at 15,000 Rand at either the Nines in Cape Town, Bel Punto in Durban, or Marble in Johannesburg. Get your wine either online at any of the Norman Goodfellows stores or online at the Dan Really Likes Wine store, and you're in the draw to win that fabulous prize through the month of May with Haut Cabrières, Norman Goodfellows, and Dan Really Likes Wine.